Hey folks, and welcome back to West Yorkshire Retro Gamer. It's Premier League preview time again. Oh yeah. Leeds United have a chance to eliminate the extreme disappointment that occurred in their match against Burnley, losing 2-0, with a home match back at Ellen Road against struggling West Ham United. This will be seen as another opportunity where Leeds United can get the 3 points. The away trip to Burnley was not great by any stretch, but being back at home where Leeds have looked decent, this could be the opportunity that they've been looking for. So, as always, I'll have a look at the lineups and the table as it stands, and we'll just have a little talk about this. Now, unlike the previous fixtures, I have taken into account just the number of appearances that players have made under West Ham's current manager, Nuno Santo, as opposed to the lineups that Graham Potter had chosen before him. So there's only been 3 matches. So this has been at least overall, the preferred lineup for Nuno Santo since he has become West Ham manager. In goal, Mads Hermansen found himself to not be in favour of the new manager and got dropped, and former PSG goalkeeper Alphonse Areola has found himself between the sticks. At right back, there has been an appearance for former Manure and Crystal Palace fullback Aaron Wan-Bissaka, but the preference has been former Southampton fullback Kyle Walker-Peters. At left back, a player with a very similar name to a player that did have a brief spell at Leeds United back in the day. It is El Hadji Malik Diouf, not to be confused with the one without the Malik. At centre back, you're looking at the Greek player Konstantinos Mavropanos, who I could be wrong, but might have had a spell at Arsenal, and I could be really wrong with that. Could be mixing it up with another Greek player for all I know. But the other player there that I am familiar with is Max Kilman, who spent quite a bit of time at Wolves. Into midfield, and you're looking at Sungutu Magasa and former Southampton man Matheus Fernandes. On the wings, and this is possibly where they are the most dangerous, you've got them, probably their main talisman, former Hull City winger Jared Bowen, and you have also got former Leeds United winger Crescencio Somerville. Then the other main player that you've got to look out for when it comes to West Ham, and that is the highly rated Brazilian Lucas Paqueta. And leading the line, if he's fit enough, is German Nicholas Füllkrug. Now, it's possible that a couple of these West Ham players might not be available for the match, but again, I'm only going off the number of appearances that they've made under Nuno Santo at West Ham this season. So again, I've not done a lot of research. I never do that much research into the opposition. I just simply don't have time to do it. So I'm literally going off who's made the most appearances for Nuno Santo at this point. Moving on to the Leeds lineup. Now this is where it gets a little bit iffy, because I've stuck with the lineup that I think Farke will go with, for the last couple of matches. This could be the last time that we see this particular 11 before any major changes are made. Now, the last match, Noah Okafor was unavailable and Jack Harrison came in. However, Dan James did make his reappearance back on the bench and got a little bit of time coming on for Brendan Aronson. Ethan Ampadu, Sean Longstaff and Anton Stack have been virtually ever present over the last couple of games. At centre-back, Joe Rodon and Pascal Struijk have kept their partnership going, and at full-back, Jayden Bogle and Gabriel Gudmundsson have also kept their places. Carl Darlow has been in between the sticks in the absence of Lucas Perry. Now, I think that, and again, obviously DCL has led the line up front. So, with this all in mind, I think that this match might have some changes, purely because of how bad it came across losing to Burnley. All the stats and metrics suggested that Leeds were actually quite good against Burnley. But on the generic eye test, I was not impressed. And I did a video a couple of days ago talking about what potential changes could be made to this Leeds lineup. But that's the changes that I would potentially have tried making if I was Leeds manager. The lineup on the screen right now is the lineup that I think that Daniel Farke will still try to play if they're all available. Now, these are the players that could be under some scrutiny or some threat of losing their starting place. In goal, Cardallo. Now, he's not necessarily been completely responsible for the 6 goals that we've conceded in the last 3 games, but the fact is that in the last 3 games he's conceded 6 goals. Lucas Perry has been back in team training, and so there is a possibility that maybe Lucas Perry returns in goal. I think that Jayden Bogle and Gabriel Gudmundsson will keep their places. I don't think there's any threat of them losing their spots unless they are injured or unless they're ill. Centre-backs, Joe Rodon, Pascal Struijk. I would go as far as saying that I think Joe Rodon will probably keep his place. He very rarely gets dropped. You would have to badly injure him, or he would have to come deathly ill to lose his place. Pascal Struijk. Now, he is the club's vice-captain. And Ethan Ampadu did come off fairly late on against Burnley. And there is rumours that both Ethan Ampadu and Pascal Struijk have come down with illness. These are our 2 club captains. So I would say that if one or both comes out, and there is a possibility that both come out, if they are both too ill to play, the captaincy then, I mean, it's up in the air, but I would say that if Longstaff starts or Calvert-Lewin starts, that the captaincy probably goes to one of those 2. That would be my estimation. Maybe even Carl Darlow if he keeps his place between the sticks. I personally would give it Longstaff if we don't have Ampadu or Struijk in the lineup. The other option would be Sam Byram, who has had very brief captaincy and is the oldest player in the squad, so obviously has the most, in theory, the most experience. So, could Joe or Pascal lose their places in the lineup? Well, if Pascal's poorly, then yeah, you would think that Jacobiol, who is Leeds' alternative left-footed centre-back, would potentially come in. Jacobiol did play 2 matches for his national team in the last international break, so he has had some game time, covered the full 90 minutes in both as far as I know. So that would be an option. In terms of central midfield, we do have the more defensive option of Ilya Gruev, and we've got the more dynamic option of Autanaka. But there is a possibility that we don't see either Pascal or Ethan on the pitch. But if they both shake off their illnesses, then I still think Farke sticks with them. At right wing, I'm going to separate the wings here. At right wing, I think Aronson plays unless Daniel Farke feels that Dan James is fit enough to start the match. Now, there's always been this argument that if you're fit enough for the subs bench, then you are fit enough to start. Whether that theory is correct and accurate, I'll leave that for you guys to decide, or girls, depending on who's watching. So, I'm a bit 50-50 on that. If they believe that the fitness level is only suitable for someone that can only maybe last 20 minutes, and it might be an opportunity to get some game time in the legs, especially if they've been out injured a long time, I can see that. But ideally, you don't want an unfit bench. That's the thing, really. So, Daniel Farke did say in his press conference as well, he was asked about whether he would risk several players if several players were only 50% ready. And Daniel Farke said that he might risk 1 or 2, but he would not risk 3, 4, 5, etc. So when he says 1 or 2, I just wonder if he will want to play Ethan and Pascal if they are physically fit enough after this illness. For their captaincy and leadership skills. I just wonder about that. Farke did also say that traditionally under his coaching, if you don't train in the final training session before a match, you are not considered for the lineup. So again, that's something that maybe needs to be taken into consideration. I would think that Longstaff probably keeps his place, and if we don't have Ampadu, Longstaff definitely keeps his place because we will need the experience. Stack, Farke in his press conference said that he was asked about Anton Stack's recent form dipping after having a very good start to the season, and Farke said that he would like to see Stack improve the level a little bit, but he wasn't overly concerned. So again, in terms of Stack, if Ampadu and Longstaff play, you've got the likes of Gruev and Tanaka that may be able to step in. On to left wing. Jack Harrison came in for the unavailable Noah Okafor last time out. Now, if Okafor's fit and available, Okafor starts. He's started to look quite good as Noah Okafor, and I would think that Daniel Farke wants him in the lineup. And again, that's not a slant on Jack Harrison. That is emphasising the potential that Noah Okafor is showing at the moment. He looks a good player. So, if Okafor's available, Okafor plays. If he doesn't, I think Jack Harrison probably comes back into the mix. This is unless we have both Daniel James and Wilfred Gnonto available. Farke might decide to try and incorporate both of those wingers onto the pitch. It might mean that maybe Dan James has to revert to the left with Willie Gnonto on the right, or he might even reverse it, keep Dan James on his favoured right, with him being a bit more direct, and then Gnonto has that little bit more game-changing trickery about his play, and so therefore might see Gnonto on the left. They might interchange within the match, you never know. But I think that at the moment, I think if Farke's able to play Aronson and Okafor, he'd definitely stick with Okafor. He might look to change Aronson. Now, again, no slant on Aronson. I think he's slowly gotten better as each match has gone on. I think the last couple of matches, I think Aronson has tried to get forward more. He's tried to be more of an offensive influence. without diminishing his defensive duties. So close one, that one. This is going to be dependent on the fitness of the other players, rather than Aronson's recent performances, I think. But again, Farke in his press conference did talk a lot about the players who missed opportunities against Burnley. The Aronson chance and the Bogle chance being the two most highlighted opportunities from Daniel Farke's point of view. So ultimately, there's no player that can avoid, constructive criticism, I don't think. At the end of the day, it could well be said, if Kirby would kindly move herself from in front of my face, I do apologise, folks, but it could be argued that maybe, every player's position is up for grabs, but at the same time, I don't think Farke thinks that there is that much wrong. And this is why I've not made any changes to that lineup that you see on the left side of the screen right now. I mean, Farke traditionally doesn't like to make a lot of changes. He only brought Harrison in because Okafor was unavailable. The rest of the lineup was the same. He only brought Darlow in because Lucas Perry wasn't available, and Darlow's kept his place ever since. Aronson came in because of the injuries to James and Nonto. This is the fact and the reality of it. Farke doesn't like to change his lineup often. So these are my thoughts, and I think this could be the last time that we see this particular 11 on the left-hand side. I think that the likes of Perry will come back in goal eventually. I think that Dan James and Willie Nonto will take up the wing positions, or at least one of the wing positions, with Okafor cementing his place there. I think that they might stick with Stack if they feel Stack's levels are getting back to what they were at the start of the season. And I think that Longstaff has kind of cemented his place in the 11, after being a pretty reasonably solid performer up to now. You're not going to shift Goodmanson, and you're probably not going to shift Bogle. Probably not going to shift Roden. And you're not going to shift Ampadu because he's club captain. So that's kind of where things are at this moment in time. So let's have a look at the table. Leeds currently sat 16th with 8 games played, 2 wins, 2 draws, 4 losses, 7 goals scored, 13 conceded, -6 goal difference, 8 points. 3 losses, 1 win, 1 draw in the last 5. It's very mixed form, and I do feel that some of the performances have been better than what those stats currently suggest. But ultimately, the only metric that counts is scoring goals and winning games. And more than the point, winning games. Whether you score goals or you don't concede them, ultimately you must win games. That's the only metric that matters one jot. So, moving on to West Ham, they have struggled. They've actually got what Burnley had when Leeds played against Burnley last time. In that they've got just the 1 win and the 1 draw, and obviously they've got 6 losses to their name. They have since changed manager from Graham Potter to Nuno Santo. They've got a couple of injuries in the squad, and at this moment in time you can tell that things are very difficult for West Ham. Sitting 19th in the table, second bottom, 1 win, 1 draw, 6 losses out of 8 games, scoring 6, conceding a whopping 18 goals, -12 goal difference, and a meagre 4 points on the board. Now, Leeds have been reasonably decent at Ellen Road this season, and have actually looked quite good. Get your chloride, flipping neck/throat, Kirby. Kind of hurts. So, as things stand, Leeds pretty much where they want to be. Just anywhere that's not in the relegation zone, Leeds will take that all season, I think. Leeds have scored one more goal, but they've conceded 5 less. So from a defensive point of view, you would argue that Leeds have been a little better than West Ham. From a scoring point of view, not a lot of difference. But it's the fact that Leeds have got double the amount of points that West Ham have after 8 games, and that could be quite telling, even at this early stage. West Ham's form, loss, draw, loss. That ain't too sparkling. Couple of difficult games in that list of 8 games that West Ham's played so far, but then again Leeds have had that as well. So, while Leeds have stuck with Daniel Farke, West Ham decided to pull the plug on Graham Potter. This was after Karen Brady went on TalkSport and praised Potter, pretty much everything under the sun. And literally about 2 games later, he gets sacked. So it was a bit of a weird statement by Karen Brady there on TalkSport, to be honest. But again, football's a results business, so as much as she was possibly keen on Graham Potter as a football manager or football coach, if you don't get the results, then you're off skis. Same will happen to Farke. If Leeds go on a losing run, or a run where they don't win games, so they're either drawing or losing, then Daniel Farke's possibly going to be out just as quickly as any other manager, dependent on the thoughts of the 49ers enterprise, the Leeds ownership. So, to kind of conclude really, what do the results do for either club? I would say that in the current circumstances, a draw for both clubs does very little. And I think I said a very similar thing regarding Leeds Burnley last week. Ultimately, a win is far more valuable to both teams than a draw. A draw is not very valuable because there's going to be some harder games coming up later on in the season where there's possibly less chance of you scoring a result, either a win or a draw. So when you're playing against teams that are kind of near you in the table, these are the matches you need to try and win. As I say, Leeds lost to Burnley, and I think West Ham lost to Brentford. So again, 2 teams that are in and around Leeds and West Ham, within a couple of positions. So a win for West Ham would put them on 7 points, but you would have to imagine that unless they heavily beat Leeds, they are probably not going to get out of the relegation zone. They could potentially go ahead of Forest, depending on what result Forest get. But bearing in mind, Leeds-West Ham is the first game of the week, of the matchday week, so at least for a temporary period, if West Ham United do win their match, they go ahead of Nottingham Forest, possibly Burnley, if they can overturn that rather poor goal difference. A win for Leeds would put Leeds on 11 points, which would budge them up pretty much where Brentford are right now, so about up to 13th. It would put them on 11. It would nudge Brentford down 1, again at least temporarily. Leeds, with that goal difference of 7 and 13 and minus 6, they really need to find a match where they can maybe bag a few goals and reduce that deficit down somewhat, and just to get a win to improve the confidence, because considering the statistics say that Leeds are playing quite well, they're not really getting the points to show for it, and this is a problem. So if there was ever a match where potentially Leeds could get a very tasty result, this could be it. Because West Ham, the manager Santo even said that he feels that the players are playing with anxiety right now, and that is never a good thing. Now, do I think there's any anxiety in the Leeds squad? Not really getting that vibe. Leeds are playing quite well and are playing with a reasonable amount of confidence. It's just fine margins with certain things that have happened on the pitch. So Leeds do need a solid performance. They need to keep it tight at the back. They need to score some goals. And I know that sounds so self-explanatory, but ultimately we need to start seeing the points. I would take a poor performance, but take the 3 points against West Ham. We need to start getting these points on the board. We have got a horrendous couple of months ahead in terms of fixtures. We've got so many of the big boys coming up, and it's not nice viewing. When you look at Leeds' fixture list coming up, it is not nice. So, something has to dramatically change very, very soon, very, very quickly. And it starts with this match against West Ham. I think Leeds can win it. Being back at Ellen Road, where we have performed quite well and also got a fair chunk of the points that we've got so far, albeit we did beat Wolves at Molineux, but Wolves just look absolutely void of ideas. Aside from that, Leeds do look quite good at home. It's just a case of whether we can get back to the defensive security that we had in those early matches, bar the Arsenal match. And then when we had that period where we had 2 or 3 games where we scored quite a few goals, if we can get back to that kind of attacking prowess. If we can do that, we're going to be in a good position. And I think there is a chance that we can do that against West Ham. I don't doubt for a second there is a couple of good players in there. Somerville, Paqueta, Bowen. Those are your 3 main danger men. I think Fulkrug might be injured. Fernandez is young. He's still quite a young talent. So we'll have to see. But hopefully Crescencio comes back, gets a nice reception and plays like a sack of crap. Because we know what he's capable of. He's a good player when he's in form. Bowen, he's another player that is former Championship and now very much a fully fledged Premier League player. And Paquette has been a high profile player at West Ham for a couple of seasons now. So we've got to watch these. We've got to nullify them. We've got to keep them quiet. And we've got to take advantage of the fact that West Ham currently are not playing well. They're not playing well, they're not playing confidently, they haven't adapted to Nuno Santo's different style of play. This is an opportunity. The new manager bounce hasn't really kicked in at West Ham after getting rid of Potter and bringing in Santo. So this now, if there was ever a good time to play West Ham, this is the time to play them. But Leeds need to be at it. But it's an evening kick-off. It's at Ellen Road. It's the first game of the match week. It's a chance for Leeds to just stamp a bit of authority on things and kick a bit of ass. That's what Leeds want to do. That's what the Leeds fans want Leeds want to do. And against a solid outfit in West Ham, they've spent quite a few seasons in Premier League. They did get relegated a couple of times, but got themselves back up again. And with this current squad, there's been a fair dose of money spent on some of these players. But you could look at it another way. Right? Areola came in with a good reputation. Walker Peters was signed from a team that got badly relegated. Diouf's got quite a bit of potential. Mavropanos, I swear down he's played a bit of Premier League before, just not a lot of it. Kilman, several seasons with Wolves, in the Premier League. Magassa, I don't know anything about. Bowen, as I say, has made that step up from Championship to Premier League and has become I think he's had a couple of England caps now, so he is seen as a good player. Fernandez, another player that's come from a team that got relegated in Southampton. Quite big money, that transfer as well, for Fernandes, if I remember right. Fulkrug, I don't know anything about really. Paqueta, he's becoming a very established, well-known good player in the Premier League now. And then Somerville, we know that Somerville was absolutely excellent in the Championship, but he's not really been able to replicate that form in the Premier League. And that's on the proviso that this 11 plays for West Ham tomorrow night. As I say, they've got a couple of players that might not be available. I think Todibo, one of their new signings, has come in at centre-back in the most recent game. And also Fulkrug was unavailable, so Paqueta moved up front. And they played somebody else. I think maybe Souček came in, who's been at West Ham a long time now. So there's enough quality in that squad. It's just a case of whether they get coached properly. From Leeds' point of view, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the most wrong that I have got this Leeds lineup. I wouldn't be surprised. Should be pointing that way, shouldn't I really? It's reversed, sorry. But again, it's, I did that video earlier about, making about 5 or 6 changes to the Leeds lineup. Nemecha gets a chance up front. Tanaka gets a chance in midfield. Who else did I mention? I mentioned the possibility of changing the entire back three. Lucas Perry, Seb Bornau and Jacobiol. Give all three of them a chance. As I say, we've shipped in 6 goals in the last 3 games. Why not change the back three and see, see if that tightens things up a little. I don't know. But I don't think Farke will go that far. Farke will stick to things as much as he can, because I don't think Farke believes there's that much wrong. We just have to be more efficient with what we're doing. We're having plenty of chances, but we've got to stop conceding the 1 or 2 that we've been conceding, and we've got to improve the efficiency. Farke's aware of this. He's already said it in his press conference. So if he's saying it, he clearly knows it. Whether he thinks it, I don't know, that's another thing entirely. But he's certainly saying it. So therefore, now we need to see some proof on the pitch of what goes on in training to improve that effectiveness and the efficiency. Get those 2 right, I think we beat West Ham tomorrow. Get it wrong, as I say, a draw doesn't help either. A draw for West Ham puts them on 5, so they're probably going to stay behind Nottingham Forest. For Leeds, it would put them on 9, so they might move up 1 place, at least temporarily, over Fulham, who then play after Leeds. So a draw doesn't really suit either club right now. You could argue long term that it's an extra point towards survival. If Leeds did get a draw tomorrow, we need a win. The fact that we probably should be on 12 points instead of 8 right now, based on certain things that have happened in recent games, that's, you look at it as 4 points dropped. Yeah, maybe a little unlucky, but it's still 4 points dropped, whichever way you look at it. And it's the points that are mattering here. So let's hope that Leeds can do the business and get those valuable 3 points tomorrow. So, with that in mind, folks, I'll leave it at that. Big thank you for watching. Do please continue to support the channel. Do please hit that like button, hit the hype button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and let's hope for a nice juicy 3 points tomorrow for Leeds United. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your day. See you next time. Bye for now.